If you're anything like me, your feed is possibly overflowing with videos like the ones you just saw. And even if yours doesn't, I know full well that I'm not alone in what I see, for videos like this have thousands of views. And recently I've been wondering, why? Of course, the quick answer would be, well, people are disillusioned with the hustle culture the world is trying to push on us, and they need a break, a moment to disconnect and feel safe and at peace. And while that is true, what interests me more is why exactly do people seek refuge on social media? Can't they watch a movie? Or better yet, go outside? Well, let's begin by exploring the outside question. But first let me show you 2 videos of essentially the same thing, and I want you to think. What's the difference between them? The first is but a clip of a rock with some moss on it. It's a piece of nature, observed impartially. In the second one, I want to tell you a story. I want you to see and feel the moss the way I do. I want you to see the rock turning into vast sand dunes and the moss a bushy desert grass. You're no longer looking at a piece of moss, you're experiencing my view of the world. This, of course, has been done by people far greater than me. Look at Miyazaki's moss. What does it make you feel? What does it make you think? My point of showing you this is to explain the worth of experiencing nature through an artistic media, for it transcends the observation and it gives you the ability to share the vision of the artist, the way they experience the moment, the way they want to make you feel. Art has the ability to take one particular emotion from the real world and purify it into an ideal form. From grotesque to outwardly beautiful, it gives you the flexibility to hone in on one emotion and carry it over to everybody, no matter where in the world they are, creating a universal appeal. That's why I think going outside and viewing nature through an artistic take are 2 different experiences that have their own merit. People seek something in the artistic portrayal of nature. Something profound, perhaps a memory or a feeling they once knew. Besides, not everybody has the luxury of being near nature, so living vicariously through someone else's digital reality could suffice. But still, why on social media and not through movies? Well, first we have to acknowledge that I'm deceiving you a little bit with this question. People still seek refuge in the movies of Studio Ghibli, exactly for that cozy, comforting feeling. But it is also true that there's media, especially Western media, that has been progressively feeling more and more estranged from what people seek. And I'm here to argue that it's Hollywood's pursuit of grandeur that pushes people away from movies and towards social media, where the human factor isn't completely lost, and they can better feel that sense of home and peace. Of course, I don't want to just throw statements at you, so I want to show you in practice what I'm talking about, and luckily we have the perfect example in the face of The Secret Garden. The Secret Garden is first and foremost a book, and then it's been adapted into movies many a times. But for the purposes of our exploration, I'll focus on the book, the 1993 and the 2020 versions, and I'll only talk about the nature and its significance for the characters and us as an audience. But first, let me give you a quick recap of the story so we're all up to speed. The Secret Garden is the story of this British girl, Mary, who was born in India during the colonial period. She was unfortunately overlooked by her parents and left to grow on her own. In the beginning of the story, Mary is a little prick. She's rude, she's bossy, and it all stems from that hurt of being unwanted. When Mary is 10 years old, a tragedy lays upon the household. Cholera wreaks havoc, there's panic amongst the people, and by the end of it nobody even thinks of letting Mary know that she is now an orphan. Found in such an unfortunate situation, Mary is sent over to her uncle back in England in a place called Yorkshire. Yorkshire is nothing like the warm lands of India. It looks gloomy and unwelcoming, mirroring how Mary feels thrown into all of this. Mary's uncle lives in a huge dark mansion, and peculiar like the mansion itself, he is aloof, secretive, and doesn't even stay there much. The story goes that once he had a beautiful wife that brought light and happiness into his heart, but she tragically died, and now the place and the man himself are just a husk of what used to be. Mary is thrown into the care of a strict governess, and Martha, a simple village girl who helps with the household work. Mary doesn't know it yet, but this rough-looking environment and the people like the blunt but kind-hearted Martha is exactly what she needs. At first, Mary is reluctant to engage with her surroundings, but as time goes by, pushed by solitude, she starts exploring the mansion and its vicinity. There, in the moor of Yorkshire, she meets a boy, Dickon, Martha's brother. Dickon is Mary's first contact with nature. He speaks to the wild animals and they listen to him, love him and follow him. This is so perplexing to Mary, a girl who's never experienced love and care. She now sees a glimpse of the natural world and how much love and happiness you can get from being in contact with it. As time passes by, Mary is bothered by a particular howl at night. People keep telling her it's just the wind, but Mary can't shake off that feeling that there is something deeper. And so she goes to explore, and eventually she meets Master Colin. He's just a sickly looking boy around her age. Despite how frail he is, Colin has quite the attitude. One could say he's even more prickly than Mary. Soon the kids realize that they are cousins. Colin, be it in a different way, is just as abandoned as Mary is. His father never comes to visit, perhaps because he hates him, or maybe because he hasn't overcome the death of his wife and has turned his back on the world of the living. And due to those unfortunate events, Colin was never attended to with love and care. He has grown to believe that he is sick and that he has a hunch and one day shall die, just like his mother. This belief has penetrated his life and existence so deeply, he never moved from his bed. He doesn't even know how to walk. He sinks into the heavy baldachin in a dark room with closed windows, awaiting his end. Mary's appearance into his life changes the course of things. Of course, it's not an easy journey, but Colin likes Mary. She tells him these great stories of the outside world, a world more beautiful than his wildest imagination. In the meantime, Mary keeps going outside, and the effects quickly become visible. She gains healthy weight, her cheeks become pink, she's stronger, more agile. She's also more mindful of her surroundings. She starts interacting with the natural world and starts learning from it. As time goes by, Mary befriends a little robin. Gaining its trust is not an easy task, but it is so rewarding. One day, the robin flies over a wall. Mary realizes that there is something on the other side, but it's been locked away from the world. Mary desperately wants to explore, but she doesn't know how, and then her friend the robin shows her the way and points her to a key buried in the ground. And so, Mary finds a very secret door and a very hidden key and enters a garden. Not just a garden, a secret garden. And do you know what she sees? Well, she sees death and a wilderness. The garden has been abandoned, just like her and her cousin, covered in thorns and wilting away. And here Dickon steps in as Mary's connection to nature, as a guide. Mary has learned to trust him, and so she lets him in the garden, and he teaches her how to clean up the soil and plant flowers and bring life to what was once dead. Wouldn't you call that magic? More time goes by, and Mary finally trusts her cousin as well and tells him of the garden. This inspires in the sickly boy an urge to live. He doesn't want to hear stories of the garden, he wants to see it. And so Master Colin does something no one thought was possible, and he asks to be taken outside in his chair carriage. People are perplexed. Just a few months ago, this boy thought that fresh air would kill him, and now he wants to go outside? But orders are orders, and so Colin goes out, and an adventure begins. Mary and Dickon very sneakily bring Colin into the secret garden. The kids marvel at the beauty of life, the blooming flowers, the robin feeding his family, the way the cold air feels when you take a deep breath, the happiness of being kissed by the warm sun rays. And before they know it, in the words of the author herself, while the secret garden was coming alive, the two children were coming alive with it. The The more Colin interacts with the outside world, the more he grows strong and even learns how to walk, something nobody believed possible. Nature has brought the life back to him, and spiritually it has transformed both him and Mary from prickly, stubborn children with poor attitude into carefree kids who run around, laugh, smile, love, breathe. The story finishes with Mary's uncle reuniting with his kid, seeing him run, seeing him happy, and in disbelief embracing him and allowing the beautiful garden that brought his life back to him to stay unlocked. It's a very simple story. I can summarize it as a girl goes from India to the UK and learns how to plant flowers. But the point is in the nuance, in those little mundane human experiences that make us feel alive. Now that you know the context, let me show you how the book, the 1993 and the 2020 versions, portray some of those same events. Let's first look at the moment when Mary meets the robin, who points her to the key of the garden. She heard a chirp and a twitter, and when she looked at the bare flower bed at her left side, there he was, hopping about and pretending to beg things out of the earth to persuade her that he had not followed her. But she knew he had followed her, and the surprise so filled her with delight that she almost trembled a little. "You do remember me," she cried out. "You do. You're prettier than anything else in the world." She chirped and talked and coaxed, and he hopped and flirted his tail and twittered. It was as if he were talking. Mistress Mary forgot that she had ever been contrary in her life when he allowed her to draw closer and closer to him and bend down and talk and try to make something like robin sounds. Oh, to think that he should actually let her come as near to him as that. She was so happy that she scarcely dared to breathe. Notice the joy derived from so simple a thing. Befriending a little bird. A few days ago, my friend and I went to the park and tried to feed the birds, and I cannot begin to describe to you the happiness you feel when the little cautious blue tit that has been looking at you suspiciously for the past 10-20 minutes finally flies towards your sore stretched hands and grabs a sunflower seed. You feel overjoyed, you feel kinder. It's an amazing achievement. It feels like the bird saw something in you and decided to trust you. That's why I can't comprehend the 2020 decision of scratching the bird friendship out and instead replacing it with a dog. It's like whoever wrote the movie cannot imagine that one can form a special bond with a wild bird, so they decided to switch it out with something safer, like a pet, leaving the bird to act as a soulless plot progression device instead of an actual character, which in my opinion devalues the thrill and isn't at all necessary. It just reads to me as if the creators were too scared that people won't find the bird friendship relatable and thus trying to go for something more common, in the process erasing what was initially special about that bond. This disconnect with the natural wild world carries over to the visuals as well. Look at the robin in the 1993 and 2020 versions. I'd imagine using CGI is easier than hanging out in nature for hours, trying to capture a robin flying about in a way that could fit your story. But I wish the creators of the 2020 movie did so, because maybe then they would have felt the magic that lacks in their movie. The magic of the real world that doesn't behave the way you order it to or the way you design it to. But now let's move to the portrayal of the garden itself. First, let's take a look at it in the book and the 1993 movie. It was the sweetest, most mysterious looking place anyone could imagine. The high walls which shut in were covered with leafless stems of climbing roses, which were so thick that they were matted together. All the ground was covered with grass of wintry brown, and out of it grew clumps of bushes, which were surely rose bushes if they were alive. There were numbers of standard roses, which had so spread their branches that they were like little trees. There were other trees in the garden, and one of the things which made the place look strangest and loveliest was that climbing roses had run all over them and swung down long tendrils which made light swaying curtains, and here and there they had caught at each other or at far-reaching branch and had crept from one tree to another and made lovely bridges of themselves. There were neither leaves nor roses on them now, and Mary did not know whether they were dead or alive. But their thin grey or brown branches and sprays looked like a sort of hazy mantle spreading over everything, walls and trees, and even brown grass there where they had fallen from their fastenings and run along the ground. It was this hazy tangle from tree to tree which made it look so mysterious. Mary had thought it must be different from other gardens, which had not been left by themselves for so long. And indeed, it was different from any other place she had ever seen in her life. "How still it is," she whispered. "How still." And now let's contrast this with the 2020 visuals. As you can see, there is immediately something off with the place. The plants are not typical for England, and the garden isn't even dead. Actually, it's flourishing. It feels like as if the creators of the movie were scared that we wouldn't like the dull brown colors of a dead garden, wanting to impress us with more, with something we haven't seen. Oh, actually, they really were scared. Check this statement from the producer of the 2020 movie, Rosie Allison. "We felt the audience would be disappointed if the garden wasn't wondrous," Allison says. "We felt passionately about not recreating nature, and we took a real odyssey around the UK to create a composite." This fear of disappointing us with simple wilted rose bushes results into an important metaphor being lost. The parallel between Mary's internal turmoil and the nature around her can no longer be drawn, and thus the final outcome is pretty visuals and no substance. What makes a garden magical isn't how it looks, it's how it makes you feel. The writers of the movie seem to be semi-aware of that. Alison says her team's take on The Secret Garden is inspired by the fact that in Burnett's memoir she recounts that the secret garden that inspired her eponymous novel was really a dumpy garden that became wondrous through her own eyes. Alison and her team translated that notion to create a visual masterpiece that's intended to be placed seen through the lens of Mary's imaginative, youthful point of view. Here is where the disconnect comes from. The writers seem to think that if we get presented with lavish, grand, exotic visuals, we'll feel the magic that Mary does in the book and the one that Burnett, the author herself, felt once. But if we go back to Burnett's words, the real garden she saw was a dumpy-looking place. She felt the magic, and in her eyes it became amazing. Therefore, to make your audience relate, you can't give them the shortcut of the unreal visuals. You have to make them feel what the author felt. By showing grand exotic plants without linking them to a familiar experience, you alienate your viewers. But how do you make an audience feel something that you yourself have never felt? I firmly believe the creators of the 2020 movie don't understand the wondrous feeling Burnett is talking about. Otherwise, the tropical gardens of Yorkshire would have never crossed their mind as an idea. What further solidifies this opinion of mine is the treatment of the garden itself. In the 2020 version, the garden is used as a setting rather than a character and an integral part of the story. Look at Mary trampling over those poppies. Not for a second does she stop to interact with them or marvel at them. Instead, she's preoccupied with chasing after the dog. This carries out throughout the whole movie. We see Mary looking up, observing the garden, but that's the most she does to interact with it. For the majority of the time, she's busy feeding the dog, playing with the dog, chasing after the dog. Even when they bring Colin into the garden later on, the first thing she does is show him the dog, and then let him pet it. I suspect this is also why we don't get a gardening scene, where the kids just sit in the dirt, exploring the various types of bulbs and helping life spring up anew. Instead, they mainly interact with the dog. Again, I presume because the writers felt that it's more relatable than the joys of planting something yourself and seeing it grow. The writers badly want to convince us that the garden is magical. We even hear Mary say this bizarre thing.
This is Grace's garden, and it needs to cure her son.
It's like she knows the intent of the original story, but the writers don't know the path to it because they themselves don't understand what creates magic. The magic Bernard was talking about is not in the grandeur, it's exactly in this unassuming place, bringing unexpected warmth and joy to your heart. A warmth that you would have never suspected you'd feel until you saw the dirt where you put a couple of seeds some time ago has been ruffled by a new force of life, and there now lays a small green shoot, stretching its neck to the sky trying to get the sun's gentle kiss. A warmth you'd never thought you would have felt until you saw a small flower suffocated by weeds and you helped it breathe. This simplicity of life heals, and you don't even realize why or how. This is the magic. But the writers didn't understand this. Instead, they attempt to compensate for the lack of so, first with something safe as a dog friend, simply because it's cute and they hope that we will overlook the other flaws, and secondly, and more unforgivably so, with humongous tropical plants that act in a fake, bizarre manner, shriveling around awkwardly as if trying to ask the audience, do you feel healed? Do you feel the unfathomable magic? You like this, right? Or do you want something even bigger, something even more? But do people really want more? Looking at people's reviews of the movie, it really doesn't seem like it. The garden is pretty but lifeless. Like everything else about the garden, the characterizations keep viewers at a chilly distance. It relies heavily on visual dynamics and doesn't quite achieve the emotional catharsis it aims for. Though the secret garden is filled with literal magic, it lacks the figurative magic needed to make it great. It's visually appealing at times, but the heart of this version of the secret garden is strangely missing. The magic was so alive in the book, but it was nowhere to be found in the lackluster film adaptation. Being a fan of the original, this remake completely lacks the warmth and charm and adventure in comparison. The Secret Garden is more like Narnia than a Yorkshire garden, as it seems to have completely different climate, vegetation, and weather from the rest of the estate it's supposedly within. What really ruins the film are its production values, or rather, its production value, which seems to be the more this looks like a shampoo commercial, the better. There's far too much CGI. The addition of the supernatural hocus pocus is ridiculous. Notice how despite the lavish visuals and the superficial magicalness, without the emotional core and the heartfelt understanding of nature and humanity, the 2020 movie disappoints and is perceived as non-magical. But now let's go back to the cottagecore content where this whole exploration journey started. And let's do a little experiment. I'll play to you social media videos, the 1993 version and the 2020 version side by side, and you tell me which one is the odd one out. Social media is not perfect, neither is the 1993 version. Generally, nothing human is perfect, but the more years pass by, the more the movie industry of the West seems to be losing touch with reality. Be it the corporations or the individuals themselves, somewhere down the line, somebody has forgotten how to human. And this results in shallow, meaningless creations, utilizing all the CGI in the world to create enormous grand scenes and narratives, fooling themselves into believing that the substance of life can be found in the immeasurable greatness. On the other hand, at our current time, the online social media cottagecore creators are way closer to the simple life, and I believe that's what's fueling their popularity and making them a better place for escapism than modern Western movies. Of course, people online portray an idealistic scene, sometimes omitting the grim and the dirty, but it doesn't matter because there's still successfully extracting exactly what we crave. The happiness of seeing the daffodils in your garden bloom, the joy of dancing in a field of flowers, the thrill of planting lettuce scraps and seeing them turn into a new plant, the excitement of a woodpecker trusting you and landing on your hand, the glee you feel when the morning sunlight kisses your face for the first time, the peace of laying on the ground, the tranquility of reading a book leaning by a tree. We don't need the grand fake CGI to be happy. We don't need fake magic. We have it already. And I can tell you, I haven't experienced anything more beautiful than the magic of real life. Hey everybody, thanks for listening to the end of the video. This topic has been on my mind for a while now. I've been feeling the gaping hole between the audiences and the so-called popular Western movies. We see it in people's reviews, in people's disappointment. And of course, I'm sure a lot of the issues stem from huge entities that don't care about anything but profit. But I feel like the industry has always been money-oriented. So there needs to be another type of disconnect down the line. And to me, it seems that some of the creators have been estranged from real life and humanity, and that's translating into convoluted shallow creations that lack soul and care. I'm really interested to hear about your thoughts and observations on the matter. Feel free to share in the comments below, and yeah, have a great day, and I'll catch you in the next one, okay?